Greetings and salutations, Reanimated fans. This is H.A. Conrad coming to you from Brooklyn, and I am here, as always, with my intrepid co-host on the West Coast, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hi. Hello.
Hello, how intrepid are you feeling today?
Yeah, 4 out of 10.
Sweet. So we have a little bit more of Silo to talk about today, Silo Series 2. This episode that we'll be chatting about is the Book of Quinn, and so I'm excited to talk about that with you. But ahead of that, we have a couple of little tidbits. Um, I don't know, I have not watched this documentary yet. Did you? Or
Oh
whatever.
no, I haven't. I
Um,
kind of thought maybe no, we probably wouldn't want to watch this for the podcast. But it is interesting. We have talked about how, long time ago we talked about how he had the original script and it got thrown out
yeah.
in favor
And
of the one that they went with Mia Jovovich.
right. And I mean, look, I think I totally understand why it got kicked out because they were looking for a pretty big commercial hit, and George Romero is not a commercial person. Like his storytelling is very different from what they were trying to do. And so anyway, I am going to watch this and happy to chat about it, but agree
Yeah.
maybe not for the podcast, but I think it's interesting
What a
to watch.
burn, though, to be like, you, sir, you're the auteur who inspired our work, but we don't want you, we don't want you to direct it because you just don't have that je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, it's pretty insulting, honestly, and doesn't shock me. And there's like one guy that's like, "Oh, I can't believe that we didn't see this." And it's like, "Yeah, you did see this, but whatever. Okay." I'm getting all annoyed, even having not only watching like the little excerpts from
I
it.
get the feeling the documentary is very sympathetic to George
Yeah,
Romero,
yeah.
but yeah, it'll be a frustrating watch, I think. Yeah, for sure.
And then next up, I honestly I have not seen this particular uh zombie web comic, Ollie Mongo. I think we may have touched on this at some point. It rings a very slight bell. But apparently this comic, which has been around since 2016, has gotten the green light for a musical. And this is the theme of the comic is that there's like this skateboarding guy that like is a zombie chaser, and the zombie apocalypse in this case has been brought upon the earth by some, I think, outer space zombie fungus or something like that. So I am very curious to watch this unfold and see how this how this plays out, so to speak. And I'm guessing they'll probably do previews like on Broadway, as it says. So we'll see. This may have legs, it may not. We'll get into it. But have you read this comic at all, Stuart?
I've never heard of it, no, but it's interesting concept. I mean, I guess the moral doesn't seem well, it's basically going to be like humans versus zombie bullies, I assume.
I guess. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting endeavor. And the thing is though, with a lot of with all the Broadway shows, you need to have an enormous amount of capital and buy-in. So this seems I will like I wish them well and I hope it goes well, and maybe it will because it's got like this um kind of a fun little vibe to it, despite the fact that it's about zombies. But we'll see what happens. I'm still pushing for an N on the Apocalypse musical, but I don't know that I will ever get it. So, um, on Broadway, that is. So
Yeah.
anyway, keeping an eye on this, and we'll kind of see as this unfolds. And I'm certainly willing to go and watch this, should it make it to the stage. So. There's a lot that still probably has to happen before this really um, really kind of like it takes off. What's interesting is that sometimes things like this actually start out in the West End and then they bring it over to Broadway, but it looks like this is probably, I don't know, I didn't see the exact details about when there was like a timeline or anything, just that it's sort of on its way to happening. So I looked for a little bit more detail on this and haven't found it yet, but I'll report back if we get an update.
No
Uh,
production timeline is available.
nope,
Yeah.
nope. All right. And then last but not least, we have not seen one of these in a while.
But
Um,
it's heartening to see one of these come back around because it suggests that there's a groundswell that an ad agency would think, you know what, we haven't done in a while, but there's a lot of support for is zombie content. And so there's a car commercial set in the backdrop of a zombie apocalypse. Now you might think, you know what, those are stupid. Let's not. But what I'm looking at here is the fact that they're willing to put down dollars against this genre, and that is a good sign. It's a sign of a genre with where people are willing to invest, and that's what we want. So it's a Kia commercial where they're advertising one of their electric cars. I don't even know which one it was, but the appeal is the car is so quiet that you can drive through a zombie apocalypse and not give away your location. And you know what? The visuals are pretty good.
yeah, the visuals do look good, and this is kind of a fun little ad, and these were very like prolific, especially I would say maybe like a decade or so ago.
Yeah, it's about 10.
Um,
It's been about 10 years.
yeah. So I'm gonna, let's see what happens, and I'm wondering if more we'll start to see more if this comes back in the same way. But it was kind of fun to see this, and I did like it. It was kind of like I thought a pretty thorough little staging, and they did everything that they needed to. So yeah. It was weirdly like a throwback though, watching it. I was like, is this really from now? So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, it was. I also had that reaction at first. I was like, "Wait, is this just somebody like? Is this in my news feed because like MSN or one of these silly news websites is like, oh, this is a new article, but it was actually from 8 years ago. But no, it
Yep.
was.
Yep. I know how that works.
But then I saw them unplug their card. I was like, no, that looks like a new Kia. So, all right, yeah, but new, cool. And that's kind of the end of news. There isn't a ton of other new announcements other than the fact that we have a long list of things to talk about coming up more in 2025, and I'm excited to get to all of them. And in order to get to them, we have to still finish reviewing season two of Silo. And I, HA, I'm gonna go against the grain a little bit for our current review series and say that this was a disappointing episode for me for
I
this.
felt the same way. No, I agree. I kept wanting I wanted more, and I wanted more answers, and I'll admit to you a little bit of this was giving me Lost end of the series feeling, because we only have a couple more episodes to go,
Yeah.
and there's a lot unanswered, and so there is a sinking feeling I have in my stomach that we were going to have even more mysteries kind of revealed, and it feels like that's where we're going to be at the end of the this season, and I'm all about Silo. I'm totally on board for more seasons of this, and I know because of the books, they're going to have to, if they're going to explain all this, that's absolutely necessary. But this did feel like it stalled a little bit,
Yeah,
and
this was a holding pattern episode,
yeah,
which is a bummer.
it
And
is.
you know what? Like all that talk about the bends last time, the whole thing about the bends was just a delaying tactic, so they didn't have to
Yep.
do more story. And
I
that's a
know.
huge bummer. And
Not to
it's
mention,
it's really obvious the way they do it too. Like, man, it was a bummer.
not to mention that I just don't think that this would work. Or I don't think it, I mean, from everything we read about, trying to treat this, I don't think that this would have been as
I
successful.
think
But
like
that's me.
in like a really basic way, it's kind of how it works. You go back
Yeah,
under
but
you go back into a pressurized area, which is underwater. Underwater does do that too.
she's been up above for a really long time, even just to get all that stuff arranged. Come on, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Anyway, so let's get into it. Let's talk about it.
The
So
Book of Quinn is the name of the episode, directed by Amber Temple Moore, written by Remy Abouchon. And we begin with Juliet picking up right where we left off at the end of last episode. She'd found signs of a disturbance where Solo may have been injured or somebody had been injured. There was a blood trail, there was a hatchet, there was an arrow. She begins to follow the blood trail and almost immediately having trouble with her ears and then grasping her hips and her joints, kind of like what we had thought might start to happen. So the bends problem didn't happen as soon as she surfaced, but within a minute or so of getting up. and starting to climb the stairs following the blood trail, she starts to have problems. And once she falls down on the stairs, we kind of cut away from her and go back to Silo 18, um, where Shirley is telling Billings, I feel like again, that he needs to be more helpful.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, a little bit of deja vu here. Um, yeah, because she's approaching him in the cafeteria and telling him, you know, be better. He's already solved the problem of the poison
Right.
food, but now she's like, now, pick a side. And he's like, no, the pact. And she's like, no, that's that's not important.
Yep.
So I don't know.
He's got a lot of people getting all over him in this particular episode, and it
Yeah.
also I'll again, as I said, it really felt like um they were spinning their wheels in this episode. One could even say they were treading water, Kara, like to give a analogy with Juliet's time in the trying to reverse her bends. Um,
Hmm.
and I felt like we were kind of going over the same ground, especially with Billings, because it already felt like, I mean, I understand that he needs to, for him and for a couple of reasons, kind of needs to follow protocol because otherwise his, credibility is questioned or that's sort of my sense of things. But it does feel like, okay, well, we've seen that Bernard's whole total, dedication to the pact, so which is what he says it is causing all these issues because he's willing to defend that no matter what. So if you're now saying that you're doing that, are you now on Bernard's side again? How does that make you any better? And again,
Well, also when Bernard is murdering people,
right,
that's not in accordance with the pact. And so like if Billings is saying I have to follow the pact, but everybody he reports to doesn't,
right,
then like how can he actually say he is being, he's following the pact and being neutral? He has to actually pick a side, and that side, I think, has to be mechanical because the other side is literally breaking the law.
right.
So,
Well, no, I mean, I think if you talk to Bernard, he would say he's upholding the pact and following the pact, and that these are the
well,
powers.
he's following the order, which I think
Right.
supersedes the pact.
Anyway, no, but my point is that like this already feels like we talked about this or like he
Yeah.
dealt with this in the
Well,
last.
yeah, he's just yeah, this is just annoying. Like
Yeah.
Billings just needs to figure out what he's going to do, and I don't think we need to be dragged along for the ride because I think we all know the right answer, and it just seems like a real tortured sort of process for him to figure out the right thing to do.
Right.
It would be get better to go faster.
It would be. And I mean there is these moments and I'm definitely jumping around a little bit, but um the whole revelation about, that his wife has that he's been holding this book and that she's not seen it. And it's interesting. This part is a little bit of an interesting to me how characters protect other characters or like from the outside world because they think it'll hurt too much to know that that existed. Because that's what this kind of feels like. Or
Hmm.
maybe he's worried that it would put her in danger if she knew about it, which it appears to put anybody in danger who knows about these kinds of things. And this is in a similar vein as when Bernard was uh telling Sims that Camille had been doing something that he was unaware of, and she's like pretending like she knows. Kathleen is pretending that she knows that she's seen this picture book, but then of course demands it from him. So I thought that exchange was interesting. And also, again, he's not like this is something that is outside of this is contraband. This is not something that is sort of within the confines of his position. So
Yeah,
he is outside of the law on this. So that was kind of an interesting little moment in
he's
this.
a
One of
hypocrite.
the yeah, and so there's that piece. But let's go back to some of the other characters.
So Lucas has a whole subplot in this episode where he is trying to use his new credentials to find the answers to the puzzle. Apparently, the Wizard of Oz was not the cipher. So he's going to Salvador Quinn's descendants' homes,
Mm.
this one family of wool makers. And as interesting as this is, and as much as it does build the character of Lucas Kyle, who has been woefully underdeveloped for
Yeah.
this whole series, it comes at the cost of driving the actual plot forward at
Well,
this late hour in the series or in the season.
yeah, and it's also they come back to it like you could have resolved this in the one scene instead of having to go back and forth and back and forth. I
Hmm.
don't think you need to have the scene with Bernard. Like you could have already had the scene with Bernard and then go and sort of seek out this information. The one kind of like interesting piece of this is, I mean, we find out what the big mystery is, and that Quinn has been basically uh, his brand, his reputation. He's an enemy because he did these things, but as it turns out, and as we find out, he was doing the things that he did to preserve the silo, and but it felt like a very roundabout way and long, tedious way to get there. I don't think you needed as many scenes as they decided to do this to play this out. And as you said, they were just kind of slowing it down and just kind of like I don't know. I don't even know what I would call it. Like this is just annoying. It's just not moving things along.
And I
I
think
don't
the question of whether he's a hero or a villain still should be up for
correct.
debate. Lucas Kyle just takes Bernard's explanation as gospel right away, which, makes you wonder how gullible he is. But he delivers that information to his to Salvador Quinn's descendants, being like, "No, you think he's a villain? No, he's a hero." But the guy basically he deleted all of their history and then deleted their memories of the whole silo, as Bernard
Well,
explains it to
and
him
how does that work? Like he drugged the water and
over
I don't
generation or
yeah,
something.
like but how does that even work? So
But just
to
think about like the collective history, all your oral tradition, everything. Like when these people, if they ever get to start over, they're gonna be at such a disadvantage. They
right.
have nothing to like. Yeah, they are screwed as a society.
Right. But and then it's also the revelation that Meadows had been there and already told this family that.
Yeah.
And so this is just kind of an annoying way to share all of this. And I do like Lucas. I like him a lot, and so that's why this bummed me out so much. I think that the thing that is sort of he's figuring out his way in this role and his interactions about his authority to basically enter this place and his he basically is like I'm like I'm Bernard Shadow. Like so you can't question whether I'm gonna get in here or not. The Raiders are trying to keep him out and he's just like he invokes his authority, which that's the first time we've seen him do that, and he seems like not psyched about it, and even how he's interacting with Quinn's descendants, he's very uncomfortable in this role. Um,
Well, the patriarch kind of has to tell him, look, you're not good at this.
Yeah, I know.
Also, which kind of puts him in his place, and then he goes back and apologizes to them later after. But it works when he's dealing with the judicial goons.
It does.
But it's nice that he also remembers his place and goes back to them and is humble later to the family. Um, and so that's kind of the Lucas Kyle piece, except no, he figures out that the book that Meadows got from this family was Salvador Quinn's copy of the Pact, and then he goes back to Meadows' apartment, and apparently that was one of the books he didn't look at because it felt like he looked at every book there
Hmm.
before. And then he like goes through his little code book and it feels like he's not getting it right still, but then he sees that she's underlined a bunch of
Yeah,
letters in the book and I'm like, I don't understand how you've solved this code.
right.
But he does, and then he starts saying like what the answer to the code is, and it's like take 20 steps forward, 2 steps back. I don't know what it is. And then it's like if you've gotten this far now you know the game is rigged or something along those lines. I don't
Hmm.
know that we know the whole answer yet.
Nope.
Um, but he's kind of further along with the with deciphering this thing.
Yeah. So we've got that, and we also have, in terms of people and their roles and what they've done or not done, we have the Walker
So
storyline.
disappointing in this story.
And do you know what's disappointing about it is that I just don't believe it of her.
she's been so clear-eyed and like
Yeah.
moral in this in her characterization, and now she's gonna throw like her whole community under the bus.
Not just that, but her it's not just her. So Walker, it's she has been basically she's being blackmailed, and we already knew that something like this would probably happen the minute she turned the camera on. But to just sort of signal that she was going to say, basically, hey, I'm open to talking. And like, not only is she knowing exactly what she's going up to, basically there was some made up kind of mechanical failure upstairs. Like, is it in IT, or is it's just above the levels where they had the barricade, right?
Yeah, it's in level 90 in the pump room, which is identical to the pump one of the pump rooms that Juliet had been in, which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
But the thing is, so she's kind of operating in this way, all about Carla, all about wanting to get her free. She's worried about her. I get all of that. But even Carla sacrificed herself and understood why and would never be on board with this. And that's why to me, it feels like a betrayal of the audience, honestly. And it doesn't really, in a betrayal of this character. I don't really feel like this is something that Walker would actually do. And so that felt a little bit, and not only that, but when she's negotiating such that it is with Bernard, she knows exactly what kind of a person he is. Why would you believe anything he says? And then as it turns out, he doesn't do the things that he's going to say.
No,
He doesn't actually let her interact with Carla. He just lets her, see her for like 5 seconds. And basically says, like, now I have you, essentially. And so that felt, to me, it felt very forced and inauthentic to her character. And then even more so, like, it's pretty obvious that she's the one who betrayed them. I mean, they, people knew she was going to go up, to do this uh quote unquote repair, also thought it was kind of weird, right? So that, like, it's pretty clear to me um that who is the person that confronts her? It's
Shirley,
Shirley
but
confronts her.
Shirley trusts her too much. But the timing is super suspect. That
Yeah.
just as she goes up there, Teddy and his whole crew gets arrested, and Shirley goes to Walker, and she's like, "Wow, I don't know how they knew they were coming." But it all happened exactly at the time that Walker was up there, and
Mhm.
it's so
Yeah.
suspicious.
And
I assume the other foot will f drop and they'll figure it out, or they'll notice that her camera is up and turned on in her office, which is one of the conditions that
Mhm.
Bernard has demanded of her.
But I
Um,
feel like Shirley was very clear that I think she suspects and
she
knew.
said there's a mole, but she doesn't. She's like saying that to Walker, like, help me figure it out. More like, I don't think Walker, unfortunately, because of how she's been written up to this point, is kind of beyond suspicion, except that now
Uh-uh.
they've done this like U-turn and it doesn't make any sense. That's why Shirley is kind of like, wow, it can't be you. Doesn't make any sense for it to be you.
Oh, I think Shirley has some suspicion. That's that. I think she doesn't want to believe it. That's what I got from that interaction. But
Nah, I don't
we're
think
gonna
so.
see. We're gonna see what happens. And the end game here is it's just dumb. I don't know. I just don't like the fact that it was that easy. Um, and granted, everybody, and okay, so this is the part that I really don't like. We saw what happened in Mechanical, like how they blackmailed the woman to poison their food,
Hmm.
how they had kept one of her loved ones. They were gonna withhold like medical care and things like that. So they already know how Walker is reacting about Carla. Everybody knows it. She's like really been very vocal about it. So it seems sort of ridiculous to me that they wouldn't be thinking that that's what's going to be happening here,
Hmm.
especially when she gets called up. So I guess we'll see that play out, hopefully by the end of the season.
So
Um,
another repetitive storyline that we've already kind of seen potentially is Camille approaches Amundsen
uh,
and asks for a favor, which is to track Lucas Kyle's movements, because she's worried about the silo and she's worried about Bernard and yada yada. And he actually does it, which is kind of crazy. I didn't expect him to do it. And then he tells Sims, and he's like, "Meet me at the orchard." But then he's like, "Stop telling your wife to ask me for favors," which I do wonder if Robert knew that Camille had gone to talk to Amundsen, and I don't want there to be another like we make moves together or not at all sort of speech.
Yeah, I think he did.
Oh,
At least make,
he looked a little disappointed when Amundsen told him that. I don't know.
um, maybe, but we'll see. And but again, this is one of those things. This is the last time I'll help you until the next time I help you. Like
Yeah.
it just is. This is the kind of thing that we keep seeing over and over again. Um, but and then also Amundsen is like, I have to follow the pact. I have to do this. So interestingly, him and Billings keep saying kind of the same thing, but very different sides of the coin. Um, and
Meanwhile, Juliet's just been underwater.
the
But then
whole time,
her air runs out. Maybe the generator runs out on the blower. She surfaces, she climbs back up the stairs, and then some lights flash in her eyes. There's a tall person with a deep voice who says, "Go away, or I've killed Solo and I'll kill you too unless you leave." And then she goes, "But I need something." And they go, "I warned you," and they shoot her. Like
yeah,
in 1 second. She gets
yep,
like 1 second of warning, and then they shoot her
right,
with an arrow.
yeah,
And she runs away. She finds a very well stocked medical
yeah.
area in Silo 17. I was like, wow,
Which
crazy.
again, I think is unlikely that Solo created antibiotics for her, but okay.
Uh,
Maybe there is a way to do it in this like medical supply thing. But anyway,
yeah, she
uh,
manages to patch herself up. This is all broken up into different scenes, but manages to patch herself up, then finds a shield and another weapon, creeps back up the stairs, and this is kind of like the last subplot. Is there another one I'm missing from this episode?
no, no, I think
Yeah.
this is the last one.
She
Yep,
sees a body on the floor. She's kind of like she's breathing hard. She's worried. She's nervous. She's injured at this point too. Her bends seem to have kind of mostly
gone away.
dissipated because the whole episode is has gone by of her being underwater. And she like sees this body. She like interacts with it. It turns out it's not a bot. Well, it is a body, but it's a bad person in a Raiders outfit, and they fight. But then she overcomes them. Then it's a girl, maybe a teenage girl, but then there's two more of them, and one of them has a bow, and she's like, "I put one of these in you already, and the next one will go in your heart." So there's three kids, maybe teenagers, and then they have Juliet Lewis. They have Juliet, dead to rights, no sign of Solo. Silo 17 is certainly not deserted. And these kids must have been born since the rebellion and the destruction of the silo, is my guess. Unless they're 26.
Yeah, no, I mean
They're like 16 or 17,
yeah,
I
they
think.
seem very young to me. So, um,
But I think all of these things, oh, yeah, all of these things could have happened in the preceding or the next episode. I would have preferred. This felt like just a filler episode, and I didn't like it.
same. And again, I get very nervous when I'm feeling those lost vibes because it definitely feels like you're not going to resolve some of the things I really want resolved in this particular season. And I know you need that to drive the intrigue, and that's kind of cool. And you need to have a little bit of a cliffhanger. But I would like certain things resolved. And again, I think part of what annoyed me so much was the retreading of the same theme with Billings and also the Walker situation and that those two things and how much time was spent on both that plus the Lucas Kyle back and forth and back and forth. I just was like this just honestly I was just like really when the end of the episode came because I just felt like nothing had been really moved forward.
No.
So but maybe we'll see more. So I'm excited to watch the last couple episodes with you and talk about it.
They better just be rolling that ball down the hill like at a rapid pace for the last two, I guess.
Agree,
No more hanging out underwater for Juliet. That's
agree,
all.
agree. Um, so if you enjoyed this or have or was frustrated by it like us, give us a send us a line at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And happy to hear thoughts on it. And then we will wrap up the next couple in short order. And so I'm excited to watch those.
True indeed. Thank you for listening and toodaloo.
Ciao.